Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Sean, and everyone gathered this morning for this celebration of life, of the source of life, and of that life expressing in each mother and father on earth. Just as an aside, before I share the scripture that inspired me this week, all of us were treated to an extra surprise last Sunday with Reverend Linda Lowry blessing us with her message. Certainly, that was just due to a lapse in communication among some of us, not the least of which was the fact that I always say, I'll see you Sunday on Sunday morning. And so it was a blessing to have her with us, though it may have been announced if, it had worked out differently. So that's what happened last Sunday. I am just so grateful for this opportunity to share with you my learning, my growth, my spiritual understanding, to have each one of you supporting me. And this morning, it is my privilege and joy to read from the creation story from Genesis in Holy Scripture. Chapter 1, verses 26 to 31, inspire me and bless us as we move forward this morning. And it reads, "And then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, over the cattle, and over all the wild beasts of the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Perhaps you, like me, for a long time, heard that scripture and understood it as the creation of the two genders, of man and woman, as they appear in physical form. It has been a great joy to me to integrate more fully, at depth, the truth of these words, which is that imbued, endowed, each of us has both male and female principles of God. Each one of us is blessed and gifted with male principles, male energy, and female energy. Certainly, it has been given to the female gender to carry life in the womb, to allow that mystery that is life to take hold for that gestation period. And certainly much of that remains a mystery, which is only part of the mystery that we embrace once we agree to this life in this material realm. It is such a joy to celebrate the source of life, expressing as mothers, expressing as children. And I guess for me, the recognition that the word mother is both a noun and a verb. We are mothers, some of us, all of us is my belief, because I believe that all of us have had opportunities, whether we carried children in our bodies or not. All of us have had the privilege, the joy, and the honor to show up with the nurturing female principle, highly active, highly energized, highly given to others who came into our energy and consciousness. And so this morning in our spiritual community, certainly we give thanks for all of that. And I just share with you that for me personally, to emphasize the gift that mothering brought to me as an individual. The English teacher loved to add the present participle at the end of mothering, understanding that it made it, in a sense, more active, more specific as an action. And on that note, a certain adult daughter was overheard saying to her mother on Mother's Day, one vacation day all year, that's all I get, and we call it Mother's Day? And her mom very freely responded, yeah, we call it Mother's Day, but technically you still have to work. And we come together on Mother's Day morning in a unity community to recognize that at some point when we found this philosophy, we all agreed to do our work, to do the work of our soul, to do the work of the one that sent us. And what is that work? Well, certainly for me, in this philosophy called unity, that work has always shown up to bless, to inform, and to expand three primary areas of life. Perhaps for you, in your experience of unity, however long that experience in this philosophy has been for you, perhaps there are three areas that resonate as having informed your spiritual journey right up until this morning that are different than my three. But I'm happy to share with you that for me, in the last almost 3 decades, unity has transformed, informed, and energized the way that I think about healing, the way that I think about relationships, and the way that I understand the principle of supply. For me, those 3 areas have been gradually transformed. I have come to understand that healing is a process. I have come to understand that healing is always possible. Always. In our unity tradition, of course, we often hearken back to the co-founders of this philosophy who demonstrated very powerful manifestations of healing in their body, mind, and spirits. And naturally, as the master teacher assured us, we can do those things and greater things in embracing healing during our time in this one incarnation that we have been given. And so this morning it will be my joy, my healing privilege to share with you some of the healing that I continue to embrace in my personal assignment on planet Earth. The second area is relationships, healthy relationships, relationships with our brothers and sisters, all of them, recognizing that the master said, call none your mother, your father on earth, your brother, your sister. There is only one. And so we understand in unity that our responsibility on the journey of expanding our souls is to ensure that that relationship with the spirit that has given us life and indwells us remains as our primary relationship, our primary goal. And certainly I came kicking and screaming to that realization. And certainly the moment that I chose to make that relationship primary, guess what? All the other relationships naturally took their holy position in my life. So healing, relationships, and finally, the notion of supply of joy, unchanging, supply of love, unending supply of anything that the world would convince us that we need. And all we need to do on a Sunday morning like this is to go for a walk in nature, as I did early this morning, noticing the profusion, the plethora, the wealth expressing in nature, which is the abundance that in unity has become a principle for us of embracing the presence of God in us. I suppose in thinking about the gift of mothering, I recognize that in unity we celebrate 12 powers, and this morning on Mother's Day, we celebrate the spiritual gift of power, power which is life, power which is source, power which is creativity. Each of us was breathed into existence, if we believe that, and certainly I have found that to be the truth, that the power of the spoken word is that, because in the beginning was the word. And so that too, in unity, in honoring mothers today, we celebrate the power of the word held in mind as thought, the word expressed through the voice box taking on a different vibration, and the power of the word when we make it permanent and write things down. And so we have in our unity philosophy shown up to take responsibility for everything that we are experiencing in our mothering, in the ways that we were mothered, in the ways that we chose to mother, and above all, in recognizing that all of us have mothered someone, and that in any gaps that seem to exist in that mothering trajectory, that there they were, all those other mothers who showed up on divine appointment to be the mothers that we may have thought we needed. But can we agree this Mother's Day on a truth? Each and every one of us has the mother that has been perfect for our unfoldment. For some of us, mother has passed into spirit realm. For some of us, mother is still here. For some of us, we may have never really known our biological mothers. And some of us are grateful for all mothers who have been on our path. So let us know this morning that we always get exactly what we need, not what we think that we may want. And so we begin our Mother's Day celebration by honoring, blessing, and being grateful for all the mothers in our lives and for all the ways that the male and female principle empowering each one of us has been able to express as mothering others. I did not know that the time to share a message with you for Mother's Day would come this year, 2022. I only know that the earliest messages that I ever heard in a unity church were by a minister who stood on the podium in front of us every Sunday for a number of years, doing her healing work with and about her own relationship with her mother in front of all of us, supported by all of our love. You can imagine coming from a very traditional denomination, as I did, and walking into a unity church in 1993 or 94 and seeing this lovely slip of a minister standing at the front expressing all of the loss, all of the sorrow, all of the fractures in her relationship with her mother that had not only informed how she was seeking to heal, but also informed how she then mothered her children. I couldn't believe I was in church. What kind of church is this? A so-called minister stands at the front, completely vulnerable, completely exposed, and sharing her humanity. And in that moment, I can still remember many moments when the Reverend shared her painful journey with her mom. I remember making a kind of silent vow to myself that I probably would not give a message on Mother's Day. And so it has been my practice for the last 20 plus years to defer to a minister who I always saw as expressing the qualities that I sought, both in the mother I became and in the mother that I attracted for this life. And so in terms of being ready this morning to share with you the journey of mothering, let me just say that for my first Unity minister, healing for her came in the form of cancer. Yes, that's right. Because we understand healing in our Unity philosophy to be defined as a restoration to wholeness. It took me many years to understand the gift, to find the gift in her having very gradually expired in front of us. She journeyed over to Carmonos Clinic, Carmonos for healing. She came back to us and talked about this illness that had gripped her body. And for some, it was very, very faith shaking. That is to say, how could this philosophy that held up potential for healing as infinite, how could this woman of so much light, so much love, and so much joy and peace be experiencing the ravages of this dis-ease? In time, it became clear to me that that was her journey of healing. It was a blessing for me, and I'm sure it is part of what allows me to be with all of you this morning to share my journey of healing, which has mostly been a process of letting go. Letting Lila go in 1996 when she made her transition was the first of many experiences of letting go that have blessed me and that have allowed me to be the mother that I chose very deliberately to become. And so I know that Lila lives on in me. I know that I can call on her. I know that her healing was perfected and that she was restored. And every experience that she had with her mom blessed all of us who were part of her journey. I have already shared with all of you in my spiritual community some of my most riveting experiences as a mother. I don't think I have shared the major letting go experience that came to me this week as I opened myself to the message that I knew I needed to hear and that I am blessed to share with you on Sundays. Most of you know that when my daughter was 6 years old, my firstborn, having come from a long history myself of not seeing myself as a mother and not wanting to be a mother, when she left me and went to live with her dad at the age of 6, that was a defining moment. Perhaps it was not as rich in my call up higher as what happened when she was 13. 7 years after she first went to live with her dad, she decided when she was 13 and her dad's wife was expecting new life, that it was time for her to return to her mom. And so she came to me for the weekend, and by the end of that weekend, she said, you know, Mom, I really have decided that I would like to move in with you. And I said, honey, whatever you desire at this point, I want you to do what feels right. And I'm happy to have you home if this is where you want to call home. And that was fine for the two of us. It did not work for her dad, bless his heart. And I say that sincerely because when she let him know that she was staying rather than going back after that particular weekend, he came in person to let her know how important she, Whitney, my daughter, how very important she was to his wife and to the survival of the children that she was carrying after great effort to conceive them. And so, having heard the message from her dad that the need was for her to return to his home in order to facilitate a healthy pregnancy, she looked at me and she said, Mom, I think I have to go. And I said, honey, I love you enough to let you go. And she did. And that too was perfect. And that too trained me in how important the letting go process is when we love someone. And so this morning, having mentioned to all of you on Easter morning, the prayer that came to me a couple of years ago, to let go takes love, I would like to share that the gift of mothering requires at least these 7 gifts. These are gifts that I have consciously given to myself first before I could give them to my daughters, who are my greatest teachers. And so I'm going to enumerate those 7 gifts, and perhaps they will resonate with how you mother yourself first and foremost, because most of us, I won't say most of us, I know that for many whom I connect with on a regular basis, the activity or the gift of mothering ourselves through these 7 gifts is often not the first mothering gift that we assign. And truly, I'm here to share with you this morning that until we can give the gift of mothering to ourselves, we are kidding ourselves if we think that we can express that nurturing, allowing, giving principle that is the feminine within each one of us. And here they are. I share these 7 with you. And then I invite you to do as I have done all week, which is to listen to what the prayer defines as these 7 qualities. This prayer that only takes on greater meaning for me from this anonymous writer. So here is the gift of mothering as it shows up in action toward myself and toward others. The gift of mothering requires caring. It requires loving. It requires teaching. It requires allowing. It requires wisdom. It requires safety. It requires protection. And last and not least, it requires the spiritual power of faith. Caring, love, teaching, allowing, wisdom, protection, safety, and faith. And here is the prayer I mentioned on Easter Sunday. To let go takes love. To let go does not mean to stop caring. It means I can't do it for someone else. To let go is not to enable, but to allow learning from natural consequences. To let go is to admit powerlessness, which means the outcome is not in my hands. To let go is to care for. To let go, that's an interesting slip, Roz. I'm going to pay attention to that one. To let go is not to care for, but to care about. To let go is not to judge, but to allow another to be him or herself. To let go is not to be in the middle, arranging all the outcomes, but to allow others to determine their own destiny. To let go is not to be less protective. It is to permit another to face reality. To let go is not to dominate, but to be willing to let things happen. To let go is not to betray the past, but to have absolute faith in the future. Because to let go means to fear less and to love more. So on this Mother's Day, if you are letting go of a situation, a personality, a desire, an ambition, a hope, a fear, what is it this morning in me that requires letting go of? I embrace it. I welcome it. I look for the gift. And if I can't see a gift in it, then I affirm, because I know it is the truth, that it has come to bless me. It has come to bless me and to offer me the opportunity to shift my perception about how I have been seeing these personalities, these circumstances, these conditions. Have I been clutching a desire? Have I been in the middle, thinking I can arrange an outcome? All of that is imprisonment. All of that is the opposite of letting go. Yesterday, I got a phone call from a dear friend. We've been friends for most of our lives, and she asked me if I would be willing to go to a mausoleum where her mother is interred. And I knew that this was happening for me. And so I agreed, even though it certainly was God's will, not mine. It appeared in my day at a time when I didn't know that that is what God's will was. And it was uplifting. It was refreshing. And it was powerful to watch that for my girlfriend, this was her process of continuing to let go of her mom in this realm, since she has passed into the spiritual realm, and knowing that only her body has gone. And so if there is some grief, some loss, some person that on Mother's Day particularly comes to your mind, perhaps we can together know the truth about it, that there is no loss in spirit. There can be no loss in spirit. And that we offer to ourselves right here, right now in this community, the gift of mothering, the gift of allowing, of accepting, the gift of caring for ourselves, the gift of wisdom, which is of the Father, and knowing that we can invoke, invite, and allow the wisdom of the Father to inform how we are receiving every single teacher on our path, how we are blessing ourselves, that we have done the best that we can as parents, that we have been the best mothers that we know how, and that we let go of believing that there is anything other than faith in that truth that sustains us. So let us return for a moment to those three areas that we focus on in unity: the potential for wholeness, for restoration, and the ability to let go of what that looks like. Because true healing, true restoration can only come for us through the power of the indwelling Christ presence. From a book called Healing and Recovery by Dr. David Hawkins, I would like to offer this excerpt as a tribute to my mom. Many of you know that she is in care, and I believe that she is getting the love from the Ursuline nuns that live with her, the love that she longed for most of her life. And this is my letting go of Mom in community. And I invite you to see if any of these words remind you of someone that you might also know. David Hawkins says, and all of you know he was not a minister. He says Christians have to give up worshiping the God of suffering. We have to give up worshiping the God of the crucifixion, the Christ of the crucifixion. It is time for us to move on to the Christ of the resurrection. That message was not that of suffering. And people who identify themselves as a body, what I call strict materialists, look at the Christ on the cross as a body and come out with pain, sickness, sin, guilt, and suffering. Was that the message? He asks. Is that what Christ died for, to teach everybody that we are a physical body? Or was his message, he says, the direct opposite? We have to substitute our confused ideas. His message was that we are not limited. We begin to look at moving towards lovingness and a higher state of consciousness to learn that the message of the Christ was resurrection. Let us give up the belief that guilt, suffering, and penance are somehow of enormous spiritual benefit. Frankly, he says, the many thousands of people that I have clinically treated over my 50 years in practice who had chronic pain, chronic guilt, chronic suffering were the most selfish and self-centered persons I have ever met. Chronic pain and suffering does not make people enlightened or loving. It usually makes them cranky, selfish, horrible, self-centered, and that brings them to just one level above guilt and shame, and that is self-pity. May we bless this morning together in our spiritual community any and all who are suffering according to this final statement by David Hawkins. Dr. Hawkins says, people with chronic pain often suffer most from self-pity, from grief, and the endless fear of the continuation of that state of consciousness, wondering if it is only going to get worse. They continually resist it, have the constant desire to get away from it. So we lift our hearts and our minds and say, so may it be done unto them, each and every one who still chooses suffering, to know that the message of the Christ was simply come follow me, which did not mean glorify, deify me. It meant do as I have done. I have shown you that you are so much more than this body. May you live from that awareness. May you know the gift of mothering and grant it unto yourself this Mother's Day morning. And so it is.